The sky over King's Landing was still choked with the black smoke of dragonfire. Ash fell like snow, clinging to broken stone and shattered dreams. The Red Keep was a carcass of its former grandeur, and silence filled its halls, broken only by the sobs of the survivors and the soft shuffle of feet trying to rebuild what had been lost. Brienne of Tarth stood beside a cracked column in the dragon pit, her golden armor dulled by soot and grief. She had not spoken much in the days since Daenerys Targaryen had died by Jon Snow's hand. War after war, death after death, and still the realm remained broken. Her oath to protect had outlasted every monarch she'd sworn it to. The Great. Lords and ladies gathered again, the same faces, many tired, some hardened, most disillusioned. Tyrion stood among them, unkempt and weary, but still sharp. When the call came to name a new ruler, the squabbling began again, until Tyrion raised a single hand and spoke a name no one expected: Brienne of Tarth. Silence fell like a dropped blade. Samwell Tarly blinked. Davos leaned forward. Gendry's mouth opened in surprise. Even Sansa turned her head. "She's not of royal blood," snapped Lord Jon Royce. "No claim, no ambition," Tyrion countered, "which is precisely why she should lead." "She's a knight," someone scoffed. "She is the knight," Sansa said coldly, "the most honorable person in this room, and the only one among us who has never broken an oath." Brienne shifted uncomfortably. "I'm no ruler." "You're what we need," Tyrion said. "You don't crave power. You understand justice. You fight for others, not for yourself." For a long moment Brienne said nothing. Her blue eyes, sharp as Valyrian steel, scanned the ruined pit. Ghosts of every ruler she'd seen rise and fall stood with her. Renly, Stannis, Catelyn, even Jaime. She bowed her head. "I will serve," she said quietly. "But not as queen, not above the people. I will be their shield, not their master." That evening word spread like fire through the ruined city. The realm had a new protector. Not a dragon, not a lion, not a wolf. A knight. Brienne's coronation did not take place in the ruins of the Red Keep, nor in the opulent sept that once crowned kings and queens, with golden circlets and bloody histories. It happened in the heart of the city, where the people lived, where the ash still clung to broken stones, and where the air still smelled of fire and grief. There was no throne, no crown, no high septon draped in robes of gold. Brienne stood atop a flat stone platform that had once been part of a market square. She wore her polished armor, not gilded, not ornamented, but marked by every blow she had taken for others. The same sword, Oathkeeper, hung at her side. Before her stood hundreds, nobles, small folk, soldiers, orphans, not subjects, witnesses. When Samwell Tarly stepped forward with a simple circlet of silver, Brienne shook her head. "No crown," she said. The murmurs began, but then she did something no ruler before her had ever done. She removed her gauntlets, set her sword aside, and knelt before the people. "I do not sit above you," she said, voice steady. "I kneel for you. I will protect you as I always have, and I will rule only as long as I am worthy. When I am not, remove me." Gasps broke the silence. Some clapped, others wept. Sansa smiled faintly from the crowd. Davos wiped his eye. That day, the people did not cheer for a queen. They whispered a title that would echo through generations. "The Shield of the Realm." Brienne named Samwell Tarly her hand. "A heart full of truth will guide mine." Arya Stark, freshly returned from her travels, was given a new role, envoy of the free peoples, roaming between kingdoms and reporting to Brienne directly. "You've seen the world. Help me understand it." Davos Seaworth became master of ships. "You know the sea, and more importantly, you know loss. You'll protect those who have nothing." Rather than rule from a throne, Brienne held open courts in plain halls where even the poorest farmer could speak. She restored old castles, not for lords, but for orphanages, training, schools and shelters for women who had lost everything in the wars. When nobles grumbled about taxes and land, she reminded them, "You feasted while others burned. Now you'll rebuild." And when one proud lord refused, she challenged him to a duel, not to kill him but to strip him of false honor. She won with one strike. And afterward she helped him stand. Brienne of Tarth was not a queen who demanded loyalty. She earned it by kneeling first. For a time, it seemed peace had finally come to Westeros. Roads were being repaired, grain reached the hungry, orphans found homes, not battlefields. And across the Seven Kingdoms, people began to speak her name with a strange mix of reverence and relief. Brienne the Just, the Shield Queen, she who kneels for none but the people. But peace is never a quiet thing, not when ambition still rots in the hearts of those who once tasted power. A rebellion sparked in the Stormlands. A group of bitter knights, descendants of the Baratheons, declared that Brienne's rule was unlawful, that a woman of no royal claim had no right to the throne. They called her a usurper, a puppet, a soft queen hiding behind talk of justice. They took castles, seized trade routes, marched under banners of old power. Her council urged caution. "Send men, not yourself," Davos warned. "Let them see your mercy, not your blade," Samwell added. But Brienne shook her head. "If I ask others to die for this realm, I must be willing to bleed for it too." And so, for the first time since her coronation, the Shield Queen rode to war. She wore her old armor, dented and worn. Her cloak bore no house sigil, only the white of peace frayed at the edges by time and fire. Her sword, Oathkeeper, gleamed under the pale morning sun. Her army was small: volunteers, former soldiers, farmers, even freedmen. The rebels laughed when they saw her ranks. They weren't laughing when she reached their gates before nightfall. Brienne didn't burn the town. She didn't siege it with starvation. She rode to the front lines, dismounted, and called out the rebel lord by name. "Sir Corwin of Rainwatch, you challenge my rule. I challenge your honor." He refused. Then his men jeered, and one young knight, barely 20, charged her. Brienne blocked the first blow, parried the second, and disarmed him with the third. She placed her blade at his throat and said, "You are not my enemy. You are just lost." She spared him. That mercy spread faster than any sword. By dusk, most of the rebel camp laid down their arms. The rebellion collapsed not by death, but by dignity. Back in King's Landing, word of the battle spread. Not just that she had won, but how she had won. They didn't chant victory. They whispered, "She fights like a storm, but ends like a prayer." Weeks after the rebellion fell, as peace began to settle once more, a shadow from Brienne's past returned, not with sword or crown, but with silent eyes and calloused hands. Jaime Lannister. He came alone, no banners, no golden armor, just a faded cloak and a face wearied by war and ghosts. The man once called Kingslayer now looked nothing like a lion, only a man still searching for what honor meant. Brienne was holding court when he entered the great hall. Still no throne, just benches and a high table. The murmurs started immediately. Some looked at him with awe, others with contempt. He bowed low, a movement stiff and careful. "I don't ask for titles," he said. "Only a place to be useful." Brienne studied him for a long moment. The past hung heavy between them. Nights in tents, baths of broken truths, hands held in silence. But this was not the time for emotion. "You can train the young knights," she said. "Show them what not to be and what they still might become." He smiled, just a little. "Still blunt as ever." "And still alive," she answered. "Over." The next moons, Jaime trained the Queen's Guard, young men and women Brienne had personally chosen from every corner of Westeros. Not for their bloodlines, but for their loyalty, their stories, their grit. A stable boy from Dorne, a girl archer from the Fingers, a deaf swordsman from Old Town. And every morning, Brienne trained with them. She did not sit above them. She bled with them. They called her not Your Grace, but Shield Mother. At night, sometimes she and Jaime would walk the gardens, what remained of them. They didn't talk much about the war, or Cersei, or death, only about what could be.
"You've done what none of us could," Jaime said once, gazing at the flickering lanterns in the distance. "I've only tried to do what's right. That's more than most ever have." She turned to him. "Why are you really here, Jaime?" He didn't speak for a long time. When he did, his voice was quiet. "Because even when I was lost, you were the only thing I believed in." But Brienne never took a consort. Not Jaime. Not anyone. She had no children, no heirs, no king to sit beside her. She said once in council, "A ruler should be bound to their people, not distracted by love nor driven by loneliness." But those who saw her eyes when Jaime left again, this time for the Riverlands to help rebuild, knew better. She chose duty, even when it broke her heart. 10 years passed under the reign of Brienne of Tarth. The 7 kingdoms did not become a utopia, but they healed. Bit by bit, wounds once carved by fire and betrayal began to close. Farmers returned to their fields. Roads, once ruled by bandits, bustled with merchants and pilgrims. Orphans grew into blacksmiths, scribes, even knights. And in every region, from the green hills of the Reach to the frost-bitten Vale, one name carried more weight than crowns. Or dragons. Brienne. Not Queen Brienne. Never that. To her people she was still the shield, the just, the woman who fought for them. Her counsel remained steady. Samwell Tarly, now a scholar as much as a hand, established the first public schools. In every major holdfast, every child deserves to read what they fight for. Arya Stark, still wild at heart, opened trading routes to distant lands, bringing spices from the Summer Isles and peace from once hostile neighbors. Davos Seaworth rebuilt the navy, not for war, but to protect fisherfolk and defend coastal towns from pirates and slavers. And Brienne, she walked the realm, not in carriages, not behind gold-plated walls, but on horseback, with dust on her boots and her sword at her side. She listened to stonemasons, helped bury the dead after floods, sat beside widows who had no names. When a village in the Riverlands was struck by plague, she stayed with them, tending the sick until the fever passed. One child who survived said, "She held my hand. She wasn't afraid." In her 10th year as ruler, Brienne summoned the greatest gathering since Aegon's conquest, not to pass new laws, but to set Westeros free from old chains. Standing before thousands in the Field of Towers, she said, "We will no longer be ruled by bloodlines. No more kings because of names. No more queens because of ancient thrones." She unveiled her final legacy, a council of the realm, elected every 10 years from all 7 kingdoms. One ruler, chosen not by birth, but by vote, by honor, by the people. Many nobles were stunned, some furious, but none could argue against her deeds, her sacrifices, her name, because when she finished speaking, they stood and clapped and wept. She knelt once more, just as she had a decade before, and handed Oathkeeper to the council. "I was never your queen," she said, "only your shield. Now it is your turn to protect what we've built." That night she returned to her chambers alone. Oathkeeper remained behind. Her armor hung on the wall, and for the first time in years, she slept without her sword by her bed. Brienne did not vanish from the world when she stepped down, but she did become quieter. No longer burdened by titles, she moved to a modest stone home just outside the rebuilt walls of King's Landing, close, enough to advise the realm, far enough to hear the wind again. The people still visited. Farmers brought bread. Children asked her to show them how to swing a wooden sword. Travelers just wanted to sit near her, to say they had once met the shield of the realm. She welcomed all, gave them her time. But more, often than not, she was seen walking alone by the river, her reflection trailing beside her in the water like a ghost she no longer feared. In the evenings, she kept a journal, pages filled not with grand speeches or commands, but with names. Names of every soldier she'd lost, every orphan she couldn't save, every oath she'd ever taken. She never stopped writing them down, older now, a few more lines on her face. She had just come from the Shivering Sea, where she helped end a slave fleet's last gasp. "You changed everything," Arya said as they walked along the cliffs. Brienne smiled faintly. "Not everything. Enough." They sat together under a wind-blown tree. Arya offered her a flask of Dornish red. "Do you regret it?" Arya asked. "Not taking a crown, not having a family of your own." Brienne looked out at the ocean. I have a realm full of sons and daughters who sleep in peace. That's more than I ever hoped for. Arya didn't press further. She knew that answer came not from pride, but from pain, carried with quiet grace. In the north they raised statues, in the Reach they composed songs. But Brienne of Tarth never sought tribute. She only asked one thing of the council before she left public life. If ever a ruler forgets why they serve, remind them. Remind them that power is not strength, that loyalty is not silence, that the realm is not theirs, it is ours. As snow fell one morning, soft, quiet, and forgiving, Brienne walked once more through the city she had protected. No guards, no ceremony, just her steps echoing through the cobbled alleys. People turned, stunned. Some whispered, others waved. One child, clutching a toy sword, ran up to her. "Are you the lady knight from the stories?" She knelt down, her voice gentle. "I was." He looked confused. "But you're real." She smiled. "I suppose I am." Years passed. Brienne's hair turned to silver. Her gait slowed, though her back remained straight. Her presence, even in age, still silenced rooms. When she entered the council chamber as a guest advisor, even the boldest young lords listened before they spoke. She never reclaimed a title, never returned to the throne, but she remained a compass, quiet, steady, necessary. One spring morning, Samwell Tarly, now gray-bearded and wise, visited her home with a bundle of papers. "It's finished," he said, placing the bound tome. On her table, the history of the Shield Queen. Brienne frowned slightly. "I told you I didn't want a book." "I didn't write it for you." Sam smiled. "I wrote it for those who will come after you." She touched the leather cover. The title was simple. Oaths and Ashes, The Reign of Brienne of Tarth. "I left space in the back," Sam added, "for your words." Brienne didn't respond, but that night, candlelight flickering, she picked up her quill, and she wrote, "I was never meant to rule. I was mocked for my strength, feared for my honor, but it was honor that outlasted the crowns, and kindness that quieted swords. I did not sit above the people, I stood beside them, and when my time comes, I ask for no song, no statue, only this, that those who lead after me remember what it means to serve." Brienne of Tarth died in her sleep at the age of 72. No pain, no fanfare, only peace. She was buried not in a crypt of kings but beneath the old weirwood tree outside her home. The people carved her final resting place with their own hands, and on the stone, they etched no crown, only a sword. And beneath it, the words, "Here lies the shield of the realm." She knelt for the people, so they would never have to again. 100 years later, a girl from the Vale, broad-shouldered, fierce-eyed, laughed at by boys who called her too big, came upon a dusty, forgotten book in an old tower. She read every word, and when she finished, she whispered, if she could do it. She strapped on a sword and began her own story. After Brienne's passing, the Council of the Realm gathered for the first open election in Westerosi history. 7 candidates were chosen, each from a different kingdom, each nominated not by bloodline, but by the people. But the process was not smooth. Lords of old houses tried to manipulate the vote. Some whispered of coups to restore a monarchy. The North threatened to walk away again, but the people remembered Brienne's words. Remind them what it means to serve. And when the votes were cast, it was a blacksmith's daughter from Flea Bottom, Lady Rena, who won by landslide. Not noble-born, not trained in war. But she had helped rebuild the city, brick by brick. She took the name Protector of the Realm, refusing the word Queen. Her first law? A festival every year on the day of Brienne's death. Years later, inspired by Brienne's life, Arya Stark, now older, quieter, founded the Order of the Shield, a knightly fellowship open to all, regardless of gender or origin. Recruits came from all corners. Taelsha, a runaway from Lys who could read battlefields like books. Joren, a mute farm boy with unmatched spear skill. Kemi, a warrior maid from the Summer Isles who sang before she fought. Each took a vow not just to protect the king or council, but to protect the helpless, first and foremost. Their sigil, a silver shield on a field of ash. Their motto, kneel for no crown, stand for the broken. 50 years after Brienne's death, the Order hosted a massive competition, the Shield Trials, where warriors competed not for glory, but for the right to carry Oathkeeper, which had remained sealed in the Hall of Justice. But the final winner shocked all. A maester named Lysa, who had never lifted a sword. Instead of winning through battle, she passed every trial through diplomacy, healing, and self-sacrifice. The council gave her the sword anyway. Brienne would have done the same, said the oldest member of the council, now in his 80s, Sir Podrick Payne. One day, deep in the archives, a young historian found a sealed letter addressed only to whoever dares to live with honor. It was from Jaime Lannister, written before his final disappearance. Inside it read, "She was the best of us. I lived a life of golden lies. She lived truth with rusted steel. If you are reading this, don't forget her. Don't forget that. Strength does not come from power but from sacrifice. And love. It must bow to duty even when it breaks you. I loved her, and I was never worthy." The letter was placed beside Brienne's journal and sealed in glass in the Hall of Oaths. It had been 60 years since Brienne's passing. The Council of the Realm had become a symbol of balance, elected leaders from each kingdom, meeting every moon to govern with fairness. But peace has a way of softening vigilance, and ambition never truly dies. One such leader was Lord Merrick of Stormhall, a brilliant young representative from the Stormlands. Charismatic, educated, secretly descended from House Baratheon. And behind his easy smile burned an old hunger, the belief that Westeros was never meant to be ruled by votes, but by might. Quietly, Merrick began replacing city guards with soldiers loyal to him. He courted wealthy families and promised them noble titles if he ever rose, and in the shadows, he reached out to the Iron Bank for backing. What he didn't know was that a girl was watching him. She arrived at the gates of King's Landing, during the Festival of the Shield, barefoot, dressed in plain leathers, her hair wild and golden like sunlight on steel. She carried a sword taller than most men's chests, and a letter with no name, only the words, "I am of her blood." Her name was Brienne Waters, a commoner, a warrior, a foundling raised in the Westerlands who had once stumbled across a journal believed to belong to Sir Jaime Lannister, a journal that claimed he had a daughter born after the war. Hidden, protected, unknown, she had come not to claim the throne, only to ask, what did she die for, and why does it feel like you've forgotten? Some laughed, others listened, but the old ones, those who had known Brienne of Tarth, felt something in their bones. She walked like her, spoke like her, fought like her, and when a drunken knight challenged her in the training yard for sport, she disarmed him in 3 moves and helped him up, just like Brienne once had. While the people praised Brienne, Lord Merrick saw a threat to his rise. He called for her arrest, claiming she was a fraud, stirring unrest. But that same night, an old warrior entered the council chamber, leaning on a cane, silver hair falling past his shoulder. Sir Podrick Payne, now 85, stood with pain in his knees but fire in his eyes. "If she is a fraud," he said, "she's the most honest one we've had in a generation." And with trembling hands he gave the council a sealed letter, written long ago by Brienne of Tarth herself, addressed to the child of my legacy. If ever they rise, protect them. The council did not act quickly enough. Despite Sir Podrick's warning and Brienne's presence, Lord Merrick's plan was already in motion. 2 nights after the festival ended, the city bells rang, not in celebration, but in alarm. Merrick's soldiers, those secretly placed among the city guard, stormed the Tower of the Hand, seized the vaults of the council, and declared a return to royal rule. He stood on the steps of the Red Keep, flanked by golden-armored knights loyal only to him, and declared himself protector of the crown and the realm, not elected, but destined. He wore no crown yet. But everyone knew he intended to take it soon. He called for the dissolution of the council, called Brienne Waters a traitor and outlaw, said the old ways had failed, that the realm needed strength, not ideals. The moment Marek's forces came for her, Brienne was already gone. Warned by an elderly maid, once a squire to Brienne herself, she slipped into the catacombs beneath the city. There, in the darkness of the old tombs, she met allies who remembered Sir Ellen of Dorne, trained by Arya's scouts, Meister Eco, who had studied every page of Brienne's journals, and a child thief named Mika, whose father had been saved by the Shield Queen during the Riverlands famine. Together they formed a secret faction, the Oathborn, their symbol, a broken crown wrapped in thorns, their creed. We fight for the promise she died to protect. Across Westeros, news of Marek's coup spread like wildfire. The Reach remained neutral, rich, cautious, afraid of picking the wrong side. The North, now ruled by descendants of Sansa Stark, sent a raven. We remember Brienne, and we do not bow to tyrants. The Iron Islands threatened chaos, sensing weakness, but it was the small folk, the bakers, the teachers, the stable hands, who began to whisper Brina's name. She's come back. Another shield, in our time. She carries the sword, and the truth. And hidden deep in a hollowed-out smithy in King's Landing, Brienne lit a fire. Oathkeeper, she whispered to the blade, passed to her by Podrick before he vanished. We have work to do.